shine. Okay.
How's
Awesome.
your shine? Got your shine on?
Beautiful. The
How do you
spotlight
know?
is on.
I
Yeah.
can tell you. Your shine
So
is beautiful. Robertszentes. Did I say that right?
perfect. Wow. Yes.
Oh, I got
Do it
lucky
again.
today.
Yeah, do it again.
Robertszentes.
Okay.
The non-hungry Hungarian.
That's right.
The advanced mind of the Advanced Mind Institute and the author
Yeah.
of Mastering Your Mind. Thank you so much for coming back to my existential outpost to share a conversation today. We have had requests. Well, actually, I got a text message on the fifth dimensional phone. It's actually still here. Let me just listen to it for a second to be sure that I
Would you?
follow the instructions perfectly. So it's replaying the text message in an audio file. Okay. So they were hoping that we would talk about the abyss.
Okay.
And it's my understanding that you are yourself an abyss spelunker. Actually, I think spelunking belongs to caves. But you're an abyss navigator. And especially the abyss at the bottom of the ocean.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yeah. I don't know if you heard the story. Several years ago, I was up in Palm Springs in California in a 3-day seminar. It was really good, high energy, a lot of very influential people. And there's this lady, her name is the Moon Lady, a really cool astrologer, had dinner with me. And she has this little, a tablet or her little device handy. So she's like, "What's your birthday?" Like, punches in my date and looks up and goes, "Oh my God." It's like, what's wrong? Is something wrong? Like, is there a monster behind me ready to cut my, or eat me, bite my head off? Because no, you walk on the bottom of the ocean. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And basically she explained, it's like, that means that all emotions, the million aspects of it, are completely familiar to you. You could go as deep as you wish. You can hit the bottom of the ocean and still not be out of breath. You'll be able to navigate in the subconscious world, in the unconscious world. So that's sort of my domain. Yes, you got it. Thank you so
And
much.
to walk at the bottom of the ocean, that is no small feat.
Of course, it's a metaphor, Yeah.
But how perfect for your expertise in the shadow realms.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's a miracle. Like I think I mentioned to you that if somebody had told me like 15 years ago that, hey, you'll be teaching, people and transformational work and spiritual work, I'm like, how adorable. Have another glass of something, and then we'll talk later. But no, it's happening. It's really awesome.
You wouldn't have believed that?
No. I would have been interested in learning it, but teaching it, after, of course, having learned it, is a different story. But it's wonderful. I'm really enjoying it. I like your hair, by the way.
Well, it's become multidimensional.
Oh yeah, it has. Really.
I woke up one morning. It was after speaking with you, and suddenly it had become multidimensional.
Oh
And
wow.
I've just been letting it unfold from there.
All right. Yeah,
Something
I'll
might start
refrain from
growing. Like I
comments.
think I might get some nests or something in here pretty soon.
Oh, that's good. Looks good.
So what about the abyss? I guess I should say existential wave. So in existential outposts such as this, we do like to dig in, sink our teeth into uncomfortable topics. And I have been spending many time, Existential wave. Okay, I'll just start that whole thing over, okay? So here in the Existential Outpost, we like to dig our teeth into uncomfortable topics, things that other people would prefer not to discuss. And my sense of you, Robert, is that that's a domain you also specialize in. And because we've been asked by the fifth dimension to discuss the abyss, how would you feel about digging our teeth into that today?
Well, awesome. I would love it because I'll give you an idea that people who have or who are afraid of the abyss, I respect it and I understand it, but there's no way out. If you don't master the abyss, you're always going to have some kind of problem, real life problem. And what I like to do is, in this short meeting or, talk today is maybe help people understand that the abyss is not a scary place where, only the special and the privileged go. It's a place where we all should go and need to go if we want to fix some real life problems. Okay, so it's very, very tangible.
Could we start by defining what the abyss is?
Defining what abyss is? Well, yeah, totally. Our physical world, our physical reality, and that includes our body, the health of our body, our financial situation, the quality of our life, is a projection, an accumulative projection of our inner mind's world. So, if, say that we want to manifest something, we want to manifest more money, then we put it into the universal law and we watch what happens. And for most people, what happens is that they manifest things with some accuracy, but it's not a sustainable long-term success pattern. Because in the abyss, in the depth of our mind, in the very deep unconscious mind, there are patterns, family, ancestral, even childhood patterns that oppose that thing that we said we want. Now, if we were to go below the surface, which is what I call talking about, and start looking at what causes the manifestation or the absence of, then we are starting to go into the abyss. But I tell you this, what people call deep and what I call deep are completely like two different things. Because the real depth will give you an incredibly amazing, fulfilling life. Superficiality, on the other hand, talking around things, talking about things, avoiding responsibility, and so on and so forth, are going to come with long-term consequences. So I do the opposite. How to help people come out of ancestral patterns, family patterns, relationship patterns, and then show them the cause from the abyss perspective. And here's the cool thing. If we don't go to the depth, the problem will re-manifest 10 or 15 or 20 years later. So the ego has all kinds of tricks. It will give us the impression that we mastered something or did something right, and just we are sitting on a ticking time bomb. So, but once you do the depth, the deep work, the abyss work, it's not possible anymore.
And where is the abyss?
What was the question?
I said, where is the abyss?
Well, the abyss is in the depth of our mind. It is in our subconscious mind. And that's where a lot of our very deep and hidden and trapped beliefs are. That's where a lot of our very deep and quite often dark shadows are. That's where a lot of our ancestral guilt is residing and trapped and maintained by the ego, suppressed and managed and orchestrated by the ego. In that depth is where our ancestral heartbreaks reside. In the depth, in the abyss, is where unresolved betrayals reside. In the depth, in the abyss, is where our unresolved core wound resides. Okay? Now, these are some of the things I just mentioned here are what drive people crazy today, because they do all the work, well, they think they are doing the right work, which is fine, but they do meditation and this and that, but they never actually understand that 10,000 layers beneath that, there's a very active volcano. And until we go there and we tame that, it's going to somehow re-manifest itself, the problem.
So with the two metaphors side by side, you're describing that there is an abyss in the subconscious, an unconscious mind. At the same time, you're describing a volcano, and that is that those are the unresolved areas that you find when you enter into and explore the abyss?
Well, there are many, many volcanoes in the depth of the ocean, and they cause, earthquakes, and they cause all kinds of other effects, and that's what we feel. But here I refer to the volcano as more of our unresolved ancestral rages and anger, because that's what's in the abyss, and that's why a lot of people are not trained, and that's why a lot of people are scared of going there, because we are going to meet the monsters. But the monsters are only a projection of our own psyche. So the cool thing is that, once we understand that we are creating the reality through our projections, whether it's projecting fears or projecting kindness, then people will also understand that all we have to do to fix the outside, if something is not working, is heal the inside. Just have to go 10,000 levels deeper than what, most people are aware of.
And how is it that people encounter the abyss? Does it come to them? Do they go to it? Does it happen?
Okay, I love the question because it's very practical. The abyss tends to hide itself from us for two reasons. One is because our ego does not want us to become aware of it. I'll tell you why later. And the other is because when people start experiencing any type of negative emotions, that would be part of the journey going down into the abyss, they tap out because they don't have the recipe, or they don't know what to make of it or how to go about it. So they go, okay, it feels wrong, it's off, I'm turning back around. But turning back around is not the solution. That's devastating. It's very often deadly. And that's what most people do, for a simple reason, because they are not aware of what's happening and what needs to be done.
So when the abyss is met, whether it arises or you find yourself tumbling into it, then what? How should it be met?
Well, in the abyss is where we have to look at a lot of our self-concepts, a lot of our projections onto each other, onto the world. I'll give you some practical ideas because it applies to everyone. When we are in the abyss, you know that because all of a sudden you feel like you're going to throw something, the tantrums. When you're in the abyss, then you know that the meditations and all the more like the lighter techniques are not working anymore. When you see a pattern that we are somehow or nonstop repeating the past, where people have a hard time getting into a relationship, or getting close to something but then never really fully manifest it to its full extent. These are all issues that stem from the abyss. So when people go down there, they're going to start meeting a brand new world. Some people call it dark side. Some people call it monsters. Some people call it our own beasts. And through the usage and the knowledge of the right techniques and the right approach, we'll start working through it. And what happens is that all these deep self-concepts and our monsters, the demons, will actually start turning around and then become allies with us instead of enemies to us. And this is what's missing, because I'll give you this sort of a general overview in my observation of humanity today, is that we have accepted substandard thinking. We have accepted the belief that we are powerless, that we don't deserve to be loved, and we have accepted thousands of additional beliefs that that's all we can do, that's all there is, and so on and so forth. And in order to really master life and get out of these limited thinking patterns, you cannot just tap it away and do some superficial stuff. You really have to address your abyss orchestrators, which would be your deep and dark, even the quantum shadows. And once you work on them, they're going to set you free. They're going to somehow give you the manifestation power that you dreamt of as a 5-year-old, but as an adult, because we have not been taught to work on ourselves, we create more and more and more and more hardship for us. And then when the hardship gets like really heavy, that's when we seek therapy, that's when we go to coaching, or that's where we start asking new questions. But I have also found that what I teach actually goes like 10,000 layers below what most people know. And then that's how I liberate people. But what I teach is actually about sustainability, how to actually keep it and bypass the ego tricks so that it's not going to return. Pardon?
How to keep what?
Keep the results. Because most of our unresolved ancestral stuff or shadow stuff are ticking time bombs. And this would be a really important thing I'd like to emphasize in this talk, is that these ticking time bombs are what we call misfortunes. These ticking time bombs are what we call accidents. These ticking time bombs are what we call financial ruin. These ticking time bombs are what we call relationship issues. And the list goes on, okay? I'm just telling you that everything happens for a reason, and everything is very predictable once you know what is driving the world, our world, your world, from the abyss.
And is the abyss acknowledged and pointed to by the various traditions of the world? Is it something Joseph Campbell described, in myth? If so, could you talk about that?
A lot of the spiritual teachings that are advanced always talk about or somehow refer to the abyss. But because the recipe of the abyss and the system of it is complex, no one's going to break it down on a YouTube video, because that's something that people need to study and they need to apply. So this has been around for a long time, but two things are happening. It's not been part of the general education. So people, an average person wouldn't know about it. They feel the pain. They see the uncomfortable life circumstances. They feel the anger. They feel the medical conditions and all that. But they don't understand that actually it's coming from this abyss, right? So it's not part of the general education. It's going to change very soon. And then the other thing is, when people realize that they are the creators of their own destiny, they're the manifestors, they start freaking out. And this is what I wrote about in my book in chapter 6, which is called The Fear of Our Own Power. It freaks people out. It's more complex than that, but once we understand that we are very powerful, once you understand that whatever we think has a physical consequence, then you can start changing your thought patterns. There are techniques for that. And all of a sudden your physical reality, your body, your health, everything just changes. Okay.
Is there any link between the abyss and the fear of our own power?
Of course. The fear of our own power comes from the abyss, because that's it relates to a very dark and very deep set of shadows. It's not just one. The shadows always come, in groups. And we can talk about it maybe in one of the upcoming interviews. I'll help people understand the layering of the shadows and why it keeps, if we don't do the work, it will keep us down. But the fear of own power is because deep down, everyone has a few shadows about power. The shadow would be a rejected self-concept, something we don't want to be, something we don't want to become, something that we would never ever want to be viewed as, are our shadow sides. But whatever we reject and push away, we become that anyhow. We start manifesting it. So to give you an idea, one of the biggest problems for humans is that they have the shadow character and the shadow story of powerlessness. Powerlessness. Okay, how does it show up? In hundreds of ways. It shows up because our manifestation is somehow, goes sideways. It shows up because we have medical conditions. It shows up because we get annoyed with life. It shows up because we get into power struggles with each other. It shows up, in many, many different ways. And how can you tell that people have it? Well, everyone has it to a large degree, but then they mask it. And that's why it's very difficult for someone who hasn't studied this to see that actually is one of the many pieces that actually causes the problem. Make sense? So we can get into that, in another, as I mentioned, the subsequent talk. But in the abyss, this fear of own power is the belief that power is dangerous. You give it the story why. Everything could have a reason. And now we, instead of us being the actors in it, we outsource it to our shadow self. And then this powerless man, powerless woman, powerless child, girl, boy, whatever the shadow characters, they start acting it out, manifesting it on our behalf. And that's exactly why, if we don't know of these things, how to integrate the shadows, what they are, how they're intertwined, which are in the abyss, people will never, ever, ever be able to sustainably make good results or bring good results. Okay? So.
Is the abyss named in the hero's journey anywhere?
Well, in order to achieve the hero's journey, which we talked about, in a previous talk, you have to go deep. You have to go into the underworld. You have to meet your monsters. You have to meet the things that are uncomfortable. You have to meet all these self-concepts. But they are not on the surface, because what meets the eye, and I'll give you a little bit of an idea, and this might be really helpful, should be very helpful for our viewers, is that what we tend to do, and that's an ego program, is that we are very proud of certain achievements. We're very proud of like, oh, I got my education. Great. Okay, I'm a good father. Wonderful. I'm a good mother. Wonderful. All these things that we are super proud of. These are kind of what we call our light shadows, or quite often our roles that we play. They are not really, the real story, because quite often they're compensating for other things below. And then when you go below the compensation, below that compensation, and all of a sudden you start seeing the real deal. The real deal. And then when you deal with the real deal, that's when you bring empowerment. That's when you bring healing. That's when you bring sustainable results, good friendships, and a quality life to yourself.
So we hear expressions such as jump into the abyss, stare into the abyss, learn how to fly through the abyss. What would you say to those? What do they point to?
I think the point of this conversation is to tell people that it exists, and there are ways to manage that domain. Now, from my personal experience, because I coached thousands of people and I went through the transformation, like really super deep, million-layered transformation. I'm not saying everyone needs that level, but I'm familiar with the intricacies. So this is what I have learned, and I'm going to say it, and then everyone can just interpret it the way they want. It's not for the faint-hearted, and you need a damn good coach. Okay? Because it's not what I've noticed, a lot of people think about self-development or transformation work is that you go after one thing and you're done, or you go after another thing and then it's done. It's like you check. It's not how it works. This is interrelated with this. You need to know the relationship between that. Then there's another piece that's underneath it, and that's actually the innocent one. And then underneath it, there's a real monster. So you have to understand, is this what I have been recording in some of my webinars and things like, if you understand how a problem is created through our thinking, and you also understand the recipe, how to uncreate it and then create something better, then you got it. You're wonderful. Life is going to reflect it in a way that you wish and you want. But again, it's not part of our general education, has not been, and therefore quite often we are wandering around with the wrong map or without a map at all. So.
Well, this will sound really superficial, but last month I took a driving trip to a different state, and when I left home, I discovered that the data function on my phone was broken, and so there was no navigation available through my phone, and I also don't have navigation in my car. So I was basically attempting to take this interstate road trip without any of the normal modern tools to navigate. And it was an experience of a gross superficial level of an abyss, in that I didn't know how I was going to get to my destination. I had no reference points. And it was kind of again, just a very superficial level test around this, because I had to sort of, grope my way to that place where I was going. And I found that I just tried various creative things, and things came to my aid along the way. And in the end, I made it there. I did get lost a number of times. I kind of went sideways and went in circles and lost time, and didn't really know the reasons for that. It seemed kind of pointless and meaningless, and it was frustrating. But in the end, I did arrive there, and somehow, like, my intuitive inner picture of it was, I was shown that it was kind of like an abyss experience, and I was shown how spiders will throw their web forward to create a tether, and then they'll jump out into that empty space, and then from that tether they'll maybe swing and add another tether, and so gradually they sort of build this scaffolding within an empty space, which we could call an abyss. So it was quite a strange, very external, 3D experience, but it did teach me something about sort of the subtle dynamics of how to navigate through the unknown.
Yeah, it's a really nice metaphor, because I use your example. It's super cool. What happened to you was not just a three-dimensional experience. It was a multidimensional experience, because the 3D aspect was that the phone, the GPS, wasn't there to assist you. Okay, so now comes the spiritual aspect, and this is where we start going deep. Your comfort, as we know it, has been compromised. All right, so now you have found what you call a new domain, new territory, and it's uncomfortable. And this is where the first thing where a lot of people fail. This is where you start feeling negative emotions, like, oh my gosh, what if? The what ifs coming from our lack of comfort. But the comfortable side actually is another shadow side. If you can train your mind to be comfortable while you're uncomfortable, you will never, ever, ever have to search and be desperate, because you will be always given the answer intuitively. See, one of the things, I'm going to repeat myself for the sake of driving the point home. If people could really, really understand that without training the subconscious, without really willing to be uncomfortable and observe the emotion and then dissolve the emotion, then we'll be able to then go to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. See, the interesting thing is, if you want to go up and up and up and up and up in life, whatever that might mean to you, because most people measure success by money, but it's really how happy you are. Are you doing what you are here to do at the soul level, right? Are you fulfilled with your friendships, and so on and so forth? So the higher we want to go on this ascension path, the deeper we have to go in our mind, because the answers are there. That's why the saying goes, as above, so below. So it's a proportional thing. So you were willing to be uncomfortable, which is great. And I've known you, for many months. So that's definitely a true statement. Huge. Doesn't mean that you're comfortable. It doesn't mean that you have to like it. It doesn't mean that it's going to be, everything's going to be fine or perfect rather. But what it means is that when you are willing to go there, then you will be given a chance to, practice your faith, listen to your intuition, and then start step by step overcoming the obstacle.
And how do you train your mind to be comfortable while you're uncomfortable?
Well, if this was the particular case, obviously there's no need to train the mind when there's no problem. And of course, most people are not aware that they have problems, and everyone does, right? I would actually start talking, said, okay, what emotions did you have while you were driving without the GPS? Because those tell me your thinking patterns. Those tell me the thought process. Were you at one point ready to turn back around and run back to safety? Were you at one point rethinking your strategy? Because those are the times when people tap out and go, this is not for me. But if you're able to, and not just the physical sense, but able to actually continue and start developing the faith and the trust and the intuition, then you're definitely, mastering the first few levels. And I would work on your, then the belief structure and the shadow structure if you name a problem or you describe a circumstance that it's not favorable to you.
So
Okay.
does it all begin with an interest and a curiosity and a willingness to face that challenge or that abyss when it arises before us?
Yeah, I'll tell you this. When you were talking, the saying came to mind, the curiosity killed the cat, right? So it's a belief, right? And many people believe it. So they kind of, anytime they get curious, the belief pops up. It's like, oh, the curiosity already killed the cat. What if I'm the cat? Oh no, let's not be curious. Okay, so it's, you have to, I'm always saying, don't just focus on your shadows, focus on your beliefs, because the shadows act out of beliefs. But it's like, oh, okay, yes, curiosity is important. Yes, you gotta be curious. We are here to explore. You've got your path, I have my path, and we're here to explore and move towards our soul mission. But if we lose curiosity, if we discard it because we are scared, then we have some unresolved traumas. So curiosity is huge, but then once you begin to move forward towards what you are curious about, you will find your own inner resistances. And this is where people go, whoa, right? Because you have to understand where you're headed, what are the resistances, how to remove the resistances, and what is the next demon that lurks behind the threshold. And when you know that, you've got the recipe and go, you know what? Easy peasy. It's really simple.
And do you learn that by running through, the many, many layers multiple times, rinse and repeat? Or how do you learn? How does it become familiar?
Well, I teach this. Obviously, I'm a trainer, so I have training courses where I break down the thousands of pieces that people can learn with practical exercises. If people choose to take 10 or 20 years and piece it together for themselves, and that's fine, that's an option, that they can read books and watch YouTube videos, but it's seeing the logic and then getting the full picture is what seems to be the challenge from my observation.
So if they want to go faster through the process of understanding and applying this process, they could do that through the trainings that you offer.
Correct. And yeah, I do have a bunch of podcasts and other recordings and interviews, and I really like speaking with you because with you it's a live conversation. When I do a podcast, I respond to a question, but there's no response back, so it's more one-dimensional, which is fine. The information is still out there, it's very helpful, but with you there is a new angle to it, which is how does this apply to a human being who is on this level or who is on this journey? So I like that.
Yeah, and who's exploring these things.
But, Oprah said many, many, many years ago, and it stuck with me, and I don't know how it goes. I believe I put it on my website when I was designing it. I said that there's none of us, every single one of us, or every single success story needs a mentor. And I know that because I had hundreds of them. Some I was around for 6 months, some for 2 years, some for 5 years, and however long. That's not the point. But we need mentors. It's just like the reason why we go to school is because we need to learn something that we haven't learned or did not know before.
It seems as if there are very few teachers and mentors in the realm of the abyss.
I agree, and I don't mean to be demeaning about it, because this is quite a lot to know. So I don't have a PhD, but I could easily have a PhD in this quantum psychological realm, the spiritual psychology. But it is, once you know that, and once you've been through and guided people through it, it becomes a logical thing, So it's just like how you drive a car. The first time it's clumsy. The second time you dreamt about it, you rethought it, and a couple of weeks later it's more natural and you just grow into it. Same thing here.
A couple weeks later, you're chewing gum, texting, styling your hair, putting on lipstick.
All depends on chewing gum is fine.
Or you might be shaving, or
yeah, I don't do that in the car. Yeah, I take showers in the car. I'm just kidding. While I drive. So.
What else would you want people to, sorry.
What else would I want people to?
Go ahead. Start over.
No, let's go with your question. I like the question.
What else would you want people to know about the abyss?
Okay. What I'd like people to know about the abyss is that the real sustainable solutions are there, only there. If you've done any self-development, meditation, know some techniques, wonderful. Don't discard anything, because the abyss is not in spite of anything you've done, but it is in addition to. That's where everything stems from. That's sort of your underground operating or control center. Okay? Nothing to be intimidated by, but I would say, I don't know the percentage, but I want to say like maybe for 10 or 20% of the population, it's not going to happen. They're going to go into the abyss because they're just at the genetic level, they're not wired. They're here to do smaller tasks. But the remaining percentage is feeling the results and the lack of understanding of the abyss. How? There's physical pain. There's medical issues. The typical, the symptoms that we observe about life when things are not working. And you will find the answer in the abyss. So I want people to know that if you've done work on yourself and somehow the results are still not satisfying, keep going. You haven't gone deep enough. Okay, that's the point. Once you go deep enough, and once you go, boom, knock that domino over, then all of a sudden the domino effect starts and will remove what we've been potentially struggling with, for 20 years.
So keep going and go deeper.
Yeah, exactly. And learn, I've been teaching for 12 years and I'm an old soul, so I've been circling around for many years and I was very heavily traumatized. So I've learned through my own skin, but I also learned through, some spiritual masters. And what's really cool is that what you'll see very shortly is that people will have a new appetite for spirituality. They will have a new interest, a new curiosity, because this has been lacking, this has been missing, and yet the answer to our well-being comes from this abyss. Okay? Now, unless people have anything or something against their well-being or another human being's well-being, then this is something that would be very natural to want to know more about.
So does it start with the symptom, the difficulty, or, how do people recognize that the abyss has come calling? and then what steps would they take after they recognize that to, as you said, to sort of navigate through the layers and find their way through it?
Okay. This is where, we have a life challenge. Quite often, it's not pretty. Life challenges are not pretty. Quite often, for many people, life falls apart. It's the pain we experience. But if we buy into the pain and not understanding that it's a divine message for us to understand the recipe of the pain, because once we reverse that recipe, then we create pleasure and we create joy, we create bliss, then, we're on the right path. But our ego, the ego mind, does not want us to become aware that we actually can fix the problem. The ego is invested in holding on to the problem. So when people run into any type of problem, pain, emotional pain, physical pain, then what they need to understand is that it's not because they have done something wrong. It's not because they're not doing something correctly. It's time to change the thinking. And how do you do that? Well, you start learning about the subconscious mind. You start learning about what are the beliefs, what are the shadows, what are the conflicts, and then I keep things very simple. And of course, each category has, 10,000 intricacies behind it. But once you understand that your mind is your control center to the world, you can actually program your mind and actually create success for your whole family. So it's not just, one-sided. So when people start experiencing something that isn't working, when they start experiencing something that is not fulfilling, something that's overly repetitive or boring or painful, that's when they need to start looking into the depth.
And maybe they also need to descend into the depths in some kind of deep ocean vehicle as navigated by those that have been there before.
Yeah, no, I agree. Look, it's an interesting thing because I learned, at teaching hypnosis and quantum hypnosis and a lot of these different techniques, that many people have a fear of deep waters. So I like the metaphor of the submarine or the appropriate vehicle to go down to the bottom of the ocean, because that also gives people a sense of protection. Like, look, it's an experienced journey. The submarine has done this before. Inside, you'll be safe. But through the windows, you can observe what's really going on, take away the learning, and when you teach your mind what's really going on, quite often it's controversial or the opposite of what we've been taught or what we thought was going on, then the mind releases the attachment to the problem and grants us a much more peaceful and much healthier existence. So I love that. Go down, use a familiar vehicle, use a safe vehicle, go down and then master yourself.
And also take a ride with, if possible, with somebody that knows how to drive that vehicle.
I mentioned that that's key. I'm not kidding. I think you and I talked about this. Like, don't know why, but most people like to drag things out. Oh, it's gonna go away. It ain't. It's not gonna go away. The ticking time bomb doesn't stop ticking. Okay, it's gonna get worse. So the longer we wait, the closer we get to the boom. And most people only respond when there's the boom. So that's when a lot of people contact me. But what I think is expected of us as humans, as we are ascending and evolving, is to not wait to the boom. Let's start tapping into our heart, start using our intuition more, and go after the healing before it becomes impossible to reverse the
Well, I
problem.
want to ask you about that. As you were describing, waiting to the point that there's an explosion. Have you mastered this process such that you recognize the stirrings earlier in the process, and then you just get in there sooner and sort of take care of whatever that issue is that's arising, and then you sort of short circuit the cycle?
I love the question. Seriously, this is awesome. Yes, absolutely. And look, my life fell apart. I almost died from a stroke, and 2 divorces, 2 bankruptcies. I mean, talking about a shit show. But why? Because no one taught me how to catch it early on. The answer is yes. When you do this work, and again, it's a remarkable but complex work, you become very psychic. You will actually feel psychically, it's like something doesn't feel right. That feeling you can trust. Most people, I have a podcast about it, I think made it like a year ago, is like, if you only want to trust your feeling, that's tainted, that's ego, that's, all kinds of, it's full of stuff that is not reliable. But once you do this work and you really start working the deep stuff, your psychic senses, that feeling, that intuitive sense, that you can trust. And you'll intercept it before it ever becomes a problem. So in other words, you pre-correct a potential problem should you have a premonition or should you have like that psychic vision, and therefore you steer your life in a direction that is avoiding the problem and gets you what you want.
Okay, so once you've developed sort of the ability to navigate in these deeper waters of the ocean or the unconscious mind, then you develop these psychic abilities where you could have a premonition. It's like you pick up some, sonar, radar. You pick up something on the screen at a greater distance sooner. Then you can intercept and you can pre-correct, and then you can make sure that you're continuing on in the direction you choose to be going in.
Exactly. And the interesting thing is, I like how you said it because it was very well paraphrased, but wouldn't you agree that this is what everybody wants deep down? To not have problems, to get out of trouble if we've been in there, to make something, to create a good living, a good type, a good lifestyle, right? So we kind of deep down want it, but it doesn't matter what we want as long as the unconscious mind opposes that. So in our previous talk, I said you got to know what you want, but you also got to be able to, go to the command center and program the beast to work with you, not against you.
Well, I've heard of this phrase, the locus of control. So some people feel that life is happening to them and they're sort of a victim of it. The outer circumstances are imposing upon them. And others feel that, no, they are the masters of their destiny. They are the ones in control. How does that fit with this?
Everything fits. What we could do is, I love the question because now it talks about victimhood and martyrdom, and these are shadows. These are called weak shadows. Maybe on our next talk, when we talk about the shadows, I can get into, I have a really, really nice slide where I describe like the 7 layers of the most common shadows. And what happens is that our victimhood, which the ego likes to really steer us to, is the most dominant one. Because it does not allow people to think and acknowledge that they are the creators of their reality. Now, it's in everyone. It is not something that we have done wrong. It just simply has not been healed. And that's why there's a logic. And once you work on your weak, so there's the weak shadow, which would be the victimhood, then that's where you all of a sudden cross the threshold and you go to the abyss. So would you mind like bringing that up next time too when we talk about the shadow world?
So basically you're saying there is a link between the abyss and these specific shadows, or maybe all the shadows, And that's its own existential conversation because it's a vast topic with a lot of dimension to explore as well.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I've been teaching this for many years, so I do have some really good visual slides, and I'll just do a one page. You know, we can bring it up.
Wonderful.
I'll share my screen, because when you see that, then you're going to understand the journey. That the journey is actually predictable. It is something that, you know, you've got a bunch of signs. You know, you did a wonderful job the paraphrasing. It's like that your psychic abilities will be naturally granted to you, but you will also have the recipe. You'll understand when you face something, you will know where you are.
Well, that brings us full circle because I think the most frightening thing for people in when the abyss comes calling or when they find themselves staring at or into the abyss is the sense of helplessness and overwhelm and fear that it is this unknown zone. And you're describing that actually there's a navigation system even for the abyss. You just have to know where to find it. You have to start using it, ideally with the help of somebody that knows how to use it. And then the fear of the unknown of the abyss actually gets replaced by a known sort of, as you use the word, recipes or the ability to navigate in the unknown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. You know, when you mentioned your trip from out of state back home without the GPS, I am certain that
Actually,
you
that was not the
faced.
problem. Getting home was no problem. It was leaving home and going to this unknown destination with no navigation device.
Oh, okay. So it's the other
Yeah,
way around.
yeah.
Okay, fine.
Coming home was
It still
actually easy.
applies. Okay. Well, I'm sure, and of course, you're the ultimate sayer. I'm sure you had some level of the fear of the unknown, right?
Yes.
It's not a bad thing, but then there are techniques to, you know, reduce the intensity of the fear of the unknown, and then other techniques that actually can, you know, tame it, where it's not a fear anymore. That's when the curiosity and explorative side that gains a lot of power, and then you know combine that with your psychic abilities, then you are going to bring success to you on autopilot. So, and yeah, I'm sorry, I just wanted to say so many things, but I realized, you know, we should put it to the shadow presentation for next time.
Okay. Wonderful. I also had a sort of a picture come to me the other day, which was that when a bird takes flight, it's also a form of jumping into the abyss because they have to leave the solid branch or ground that they're perched upon, and they have to jump out. And how frightening that must be for, you know, the baby bird first flight.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, there's a familiarity with that. The first thing is to jump, and then you get familiar with the process that once you jump and once you're out there, there is something there to help you through, to help you fly.
Yeah, I like that because it is such an, you know, an everyday event. You know, little birds are learning to fly, and if you put a human in those shoes, metaphorically, we also have to jump, because what happens to the little bird who never jumps, never learns to fly? What happens to the bird who doesn't know how to fly? Dies, right? It's completely incapable of any kind of survival, you know, done, over with. And that's what unfortunately happens to a lot of people. They never jump, and they literally end up staying in the nest, not exploring, and shrinking and psychologically becoming just very insecure. And it translates to a lot of physical, you know, real life problems. So yeah, jumping is necessary, learning to fly is necessary. I love that metaphor. And when you do, the second time is going to be less scary, the 10th time is going to be even less scary, and then you will be a wonderful, you know, master of both the ground and the air.
And eventually you may learn to love that jump into the abyss because you know
Yeah, exactly.
more of
Exactly,
what's out
because
there.
you know, think about it. these jumps, even though they are like metaphorical, although most people probably picture the bird jumping, which I've seen many videos, it's fascinating. But these jumps are applicable to us when we start a new adventure, when we start a new business, when we quit a job and we start our own business, when we enter a new relationship. All of these things are these jumps. You take a chance, right?
So maybe that's the tie to the hero's journey, is that it's the call to adventure. There's this new something that opens up an invitation, and because it's unknown, because it's new, uncharted, it is an abyss.
And you know, I'm kind of excited about already, like thinking about our next presentation, because I can give you the very specifics. What keeps people from jumping? What keeps people in the nest? And what does that lead to, and how to heal it, how to fix it, where people go, you know what? I'm sick and tired of being in the nest. I'm sick and tired of sitting in the sidelines of life. I'm going to jump. And then when you develop that faith, when you develop that trust, which is trust is related back to our core wound, then you really start trusting yourself and you build up your self-confidence. And the reason why people don't take action, don't do the things that they logically know is because they've been sitting in the nest for too long, because they didn't know who to trust and who to get help from. Who's a good mama bird or papa bird, to show them how to do it? Because we all want to fly.
The abyss navigating showers.
Yep.
The way showers.
Yep. That's right. It's fun. It's fun.
Well, it must be wonderful when
telephone.
It gets to the point that it's fun.
Yeah, exactly. I mentioned it's not for the faint-hearted, but nothing that's worth living for is easy. We've been also conditioned to think like, 5 easy steps will get you there. Pop a pill and it's going to go away. It ain't that way. Anyone with a reasonable, logical mind understands that you want something worthy, you have to really go for it and then earn it. So.
Okay, go for it and
Awesome.
earn it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Robert.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's really fun. I appreciate your good questions, and I like how you help the topic become relatable to people, because one of the things, me being a trainer of quantum psychology and spiritual psychology and all the stuff, is that, and I try to tame myself, becomes too technical sometimes. So the relatability is wonderful. I like how you brought in the metaphors.
I'm a fellow abyss navigator.
Okay.
But just much earlier in the journey.
Yeah, that's good. I think the divine plan is that all of us should bring our gifts, and then whatever we are really good at whatever level, then we give it to help other humans. So I think all levels are wonderful. Thanks again.
Thank you so much. So we will continue on
the
targeted discussion around shadow realms and how it links to the abyss in a future conversation.
I think you love it because you have a very good intuitive sense, but you're also very logical. And that you're going to see how that logic is wacky, but really cool.
Okay, wacky and logical all at the same time.
Yeah, you like that, right?
That's in my wheelhouse.
Awesome.
Thank you, Robert.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay, giving you a big existential wave, and see you soon.
Okay, talk soon.
We'll be getting our phone call, so be ready.
Okay, all right.
Okay, bye.
Good seeing you. Bye.
Same.